Everyone laughed when my sister raised her glass and called me the family secretary. The table was full relatives, colleagues, even two of her investors. My mother smiled. Like it was harmless. My father looked at his plate. Someone beside me actually clapped. I remember the sound of forks touching china and the quiet buzz of phones recording the toast. Vanessa kept talking about her defense contract and the future it would bring her company. No one asked what I did all day. No one asked why I was quiet. The approval for that contract was already sitting in my inboxy. Didn't correct her that night. Restaurant lights were warm and low, the kind that make every table look softer than it really is. Vanessa stood at the center of it all, confident and relaxed, explaining her project to people who leaned forward like they were watching history happen in real time. I sat 2 chairs away. My mother occasionally glanced at me with that small, tight smile she always used when things became uncomfortable, but not serious enough to interrupt. My father kept refilling water glasses. Like the act of pouring could erase tension. Vanessa described the contract again. A defense system called Guardian Halo, a network designed to detect and intercept aerial threats faster than anything currently deployed. The kind of technology investors like to call the future. People nodded. Simeon asked how long the approval process would take. Vanessa laughed lightly and waved her hand. Oh, government approval is mostly paperwork, she said. A lot of people pushing files from one desk to another. Her eyes flicked toward me. Few guests followed the glance. The joke landed exactly where she meant it. Tosh would know. Vanessa, a dead me aunt, laughed first, then cousin. The sound spread quickly. Polite and Izai kept my hands folded in my lappy. Had spent 8 years working inside the Defense Procurement Review Office. My job was quiet, mostly invisible to anyone outside the building. We reviewed technical, compliance, safety documentation, risk assessments were the final line between ambitious companies and real deployment, but explaining that would have sounded defensive. And defense in my family was usually treated like weakness, so I stayed silent halfway. Through dessert, my phone vibrated against the table. Not a text, a priority notification. He glanced down. Guardian Halo, LRIP authorization review. A signed subject line was short, but the contract number below it made my chest tight. Vanessa kept speaking, telling one of the investors about test demonstrations in Arizona. Her voice was steady, confident. I opened the message. 30 attachments performance reports, engineering certification, safe evaluations, and the final approval line waiting. At the bottom of the review chain, I locked my phone and slid it back beside my plate across the table. Vanessa was explaining how proud our parents were of her work. My father nodded slightly, like someone confirming a story he'd already agreed to believe. Server cleared the plate. Somion suggested another toast. Vanessa raised her glass again, this time thanking the people who believed in her vision. Then she looked directly at me. And thank you to my sister, she said lightly, for reminding me every day what happens when you play life to saath. Table laughed again. My mother gave a small sigh, like the moment had stretched a little longer than she preferred, but she didn't say anything. No one did. Dinner ended with hugs, business cards, promises to stay in touch. Outside, the night air felt cooler than I expected. Vanessa walked ahead with her investors, still talking about future expansion and defense partnerships. My parents followed slowly behind them. My father stopped beside me near the curb. She's doing well, he said. He nodded. She's worked very hard. He looked at me for a second, like he wanted to add something else, but the words didn't come. Instead, he patted my shoulder gently. You've always been the steady one, he said. Then he walked away to join the others. He stood there for another minute before unlocking my phone again. The Guardian Halo file was still open. That dinner wasn't the first time my sister had spoken about me like that. It was just the first time. Other people were listening when we were younger. The difference between us seemed small. Vanessa was louder, I was quieter. Teachers called her confident and called me thoughtful. My parents treated those words like predictions instead of descriptions. Confident meant opportunity. Meant Patyan. Savannah joined debate club. I helped organize the school library after classes. She liked rooms where people watched her speak. I preferred places where work happened quietly in the background. At first, the contrast felt harmless, but small habits grow into expectations. By the time we reached college, Vanessa was already building the story people would repeat about her. She studied business and defense contracting, always talking about scale leadership. Innovation, she loved words that sounded large. Studied public administration and systems. Safe-timey professors spoke about responsibility, risk analysis, the quiet mathematics of preventing disasters. None of it sounded impressive at dinner tables. When Vanessa graduated, my parents threw a party that filled our backyard with neighbors and co-workers. When I graduated a year later, my mother suggested we celebrate with takeout and a movie. Esh said it gently, like she was protecting me from attention. I might not want to accept it because arguing would have turned the moment into something heavier. After college, Vanessa moved fast, joined a small defense technology firm, and started climbing immediately. Promotions followed, conferences, articles in industry magazine. Every few months, my parents would forward me another link. Look what your sister accomplished. Shedmanwal. I took the civil service examee job in the Defense Procurement Review Office. Began in a gray building where most of the hallways looked exactly the same. My work involved reading long technical reports and asking quiet questions. Most days, no one outside the building knew what I did, and honestly, that was the point. First time Vanessa made a joke about my work was during Thanksgiving 3 years. Agasamion asked about my job before I could answer. Vanessa leaned back in her chair. She's basically the person who stamps forms. After the real work is finished, she said. The table laughed. Politayu tried explaining that the review office sometimes stopped projects entirely when safety documentation failed. Vanessa smiled at me the way people do when they want to soften disagreement. Sure, she said, but mostly it's paperwork. My father nodded slowly. Well, every system needs administrators, he said. Meant it kindly, but kindness doesn't always correct a story. Once it starts spreading over time, the version of me that existed in my family became simpler. Vanessa built things. He processed forms at holidays. People asked her about the future of defense technology. They asked me if government work was boring. Sometimes Vanessa would tease me in front of friends. Nothing cruel enough to cause an argument, just small remarks. Careful, or my sister will file a report. Don't worry, she'll approve it eventually. A joke added another thin layer to the story. Everyone already believed, and I let it happen, partly because correcting it would have sounded defensive, partly because I loved my sister even when she spoke about me like I was a smaller version of myself, but mostly because I believed something quiet that I never said aloud. On day the work would matter, not in a dramatic way, just in the quiet, ordinary way. Safety always matters after people stop noticing. Edie didn't know then that the moment would arrive in the form of my sister's biggest contractor, that the file waiting on my desk would force every one of those old stories into the open. The file arrived the next morning. It was larger than most. Hundreds of pages, technical diagrams, performance logs, test results, financial summaries. The title sat quietly at the top of the first page. Guardian Halo Defensive Intercept System. Knew the company immediately. Telesaget Dynamics, Vanessa's company. For a few seconds, I simply stared at the screen. The office around me hummed with the usual sounds: printers feeding paper, phones ringing softly in distant cubicles. Someone laughing near the elevator. Nothing about the room suggested that anything unusual had happened. But the contract number told me everything I needed to know. This was the deal she had celebrated the night before, and it had landed in my review queue. Government procurement works in layers. Engineers test systems, contractors present. Results review teams examine the data, then someone in my office signs the approval. That allows production to begin most of the time. The process is routine, but routine doesn't mean unimportant. Rules exist because small failures can become large ones. Very quickly started reading. First section described the system's purpose. Guardian Halo was designed to intercept hostile drones approaching protected zones, airports, military bases, civilian infrastructure. Language was confident. Results looked impressive. 9% success rate, 97% response speed. Under 3 seconds, he turned the pagethan another. Everything looked clean. Almost too clean. Real systems usually leave messy trails in their testing logs. Minor faults, adjustments, small delays. Engineers document while improving performance, but these logs move like polished glass, perfect numbers, perfect timing. No irregularities. Me eyes slowed over one particular line: intercept acquisition delay. Second chat. Number felt wrong immediately. No defensive system in the world reacts instantly. Sensors need time. Processors